Great, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Kyle Barnholt. I am the CEO and co-founder at TrewUp. We help brands manage their deductions and trade spend to maximize profitability. And I'm just so excited to have you join me today in session 2 of our Deduction Mastery Framework. Today, we will dive into the insights portion of the framework. And don't worry if you missed the last video, I will do a quick high-level overview of what we talked about in the last one. And as far as the agenda goes today, I'll do that. We'll talk insights. We'll talk 4 keys to success, and then I'll make sure to wrap it up. So I'll spend about 10 minutes doing that. My goal always in these videos is to share with you something that you can walk away, something tangible that you can implement in your business to start seeing results immediately. So let's get into it. If you don't mind, at the end, I will talk about how top 1% of the brands in our industry are 10xing their results. So if you'll allow me to, I'll make sure to hit on that after we run through the insights portion of the framework. So if you missed the last call, just a quick overview of myself. I spent about 12 to 15 years at Hain Celestial, a large multi-brand publicly traded company. Was a complete blessing and awesome opportunity for me in my career to be able to do that. I spent time managing distributors and retailers and sales teams, and then I jumped over to a smaller company, New Zealand-based, and saw firsthand there how deductions impact a smaller organization. And so in both of those experiences, I learned some tricks of the trade that I want to share with you here today, and that's where this framework comes from. So I'll make sure to share my screen right now. We'll talk a little bit about the framework, and just give me 1 second to pull it up. All right, sweet. Here we go. All right, so gave you my background just real quick on the problem. So as you all likely know, the challenge here is we get our purchase orders, we send our invoices, we're getting paid by our customers, and at the end of the day, you get deductions taken off of those payments, and you're expecting one number, and you end up with a different number, and now you're left trying to figure out what's going on. You're going into portals or emails, and you're trying to understand like what took place, what's the reason behind these deductions, and it can be time consuming, it can be extremely confusing, and it's this is actually something we see across the industry. So there's no one particular distributor or retailer. It's really a broad practice that can be a challenge. And so my goal today my promise is to give you something that can cut through the noise on this. It's a framework that can help you kind of get this under control and into a place that you really feel like you know what's going on, you have information, you have insights into your business, and that's where I want to help you get. So that'll be what we do today. Before I jump in, just a quick story. I shared this on the last, but if you missed, early on in my career, I was managing distributors and retailers, like I mentioned, and got to a situation where we had the deductions situation and trade spend on the rise, and we were in a situation where we were overspending. We didn't know where it was coming from and what was happening. Like, we knew at the very highest level, but when you tried to peel back the onion, it was a really challenging process to try to get through. And so I was getting calls and calls that I didn't like to get. I was asking questions that I couldn't get answers for. And finally, we just kind of got to a point where, like, we got to roll up our sleeves and we got to dive into this thing and figure out what's happening in the business and try to turn the tide. And as you know, in some cases, you might manage an account where others are spending trade dollars that you don't have control over. And that was one of the challenges that I was faced with. And so we did. We rolled up our sleeves. We got into it. We figured out a process, and we created a reporting structure that allowed us to begin to really understand the nuances of what was happening in the business. Through that, we managed to reduce our trade spend, reduce the non-working trade dollars, reinvest those dollars into events that were going to drive revenue and did drive revenue. And we were fortunate enough to get growth in the top line of 25%, not on a low base, as well as come in at or underspent for the year. So we hit our budget. We accomplished the goal, but man, it was touch and go there for a minute. And so I just share that story to say that is what we're talking about today. It's this framework that allowed us to really understand, peel back the onion, and really start to drill into the cause, the insights, and now start to take action. And so I will share with you the framework that we shared last week. All right, so here is the Deduction Mastery Framework. Okay. And it is a three-sided framework where we've got categorize. Okay, we talked about that last week. That was session 1. We've got insights, which we'll be talking about today. And we've got root cause. And then last but not least, we talk about action. So today, we're going to dive into insights. Okay, so my goal today is to run us through insights, and but this is the framework. All right, this is the framework we're talking about. We want to categorize our deductions. I talked last week about how we do that. I actually have some examples to show here today, and then we'll dive into insights. So if I scroll down, last week I talked about pick one account, figure out a way to get their deductions into a format that you can work with. We talked about Excel. I mentioned having the invoice number, the account that we're talking about, any other information you can include. You got your date, your extended amount, and then you add the category. So I gave you some categories to think about. And then from there, we create a report that we put in a share drive, we share with other folks in the organization, right? And that report can look something like this, where you've got your total trade deductions, you've got the categories with the totals, and you have it month over month. And today we're going to talk about why that's so important. And so I am going to go to the 4 keys to success. And let me start with number 1, which is to review our trends. All right, we're going to review trends. And I can even show this in action. And in that part, we want to identify trends. Thank you for your grace. Trends and or outliers. Okay, this is going to be critical in understanding the insights of our deductions. What's going on? Where are the hot spots? And I like to highlight areas of focus. to focus. And I'll come back to that, but it's really just about highlighting those outliers, those areas you really want to drill into. Okay, and then from there, we are going to drill in or drill down. And for that, we're going to use deduction list that I just showed you. To drill in, we're going to filter. Okay, and we're going to do that category, month, etc. And then we're going to sort largest to smallest. And that'll help us to really start to get into the 80-20 rule. So the hot tip here is to, if you use a pivot and you do it right, you can have drill-ins, and that'll allow you to really drill in and figure out kind of what is underneath, right? What are those line items underneath making up the total number? Again, I'll come back to a visual of this in a moment, but then we have analyze. Okay, and in the analyze section, we're going to talk a little bit about, you want to identify those deductions that are driving the biggest number. Deductions. So we started high, we got a trend, a big number in a certain month in a certain category. We drill down, we identify then at the lowest level or a lower level the deductions that are driving the number. And then we're going to review the backup to understand, right? And I'm going to give us an example in a moment, but if it's a logistics fee, then you drill down, you find the deduction, and under there you drill into the backup of that deduction. That's what we're talking about. And again, like I said, we got the 80-20 rule. So let's focus on the big ones that are driving the number. And then last is diagnose. And once we're here, we're diagnosing kind of what's going on. So I would call this like a subcategory, or what actually happened, right? So like I just said, if it's a logistics fee, you dive in, you find there's one big one or multiple that are the same. They're the big deductions driving the number, and you find out it's a late fee. That's what we're talking about here. So I like to add notes or a subcategory to my list, deduction list, and then this is where I also create a folder and save deduction backup, save backup docs. Okay, this is going to be something you can refer back to, and we'll talk about that in the next session when I talk about root cause analysis. So here we're going to review those account documents. That's really going to be the key. That's the key hot tip, is not just the backup document, but for each of these large accounts for our business, they have documentation. It may be, a document about their fees, about what the logistics kind of rules are to work with them. You're going to want to find those documents that allows you to really understand what's happening with that deduction and why it's happening. And again, that'll lead into our insights into why this is happening, which will lead to our that will then lead to our root cause analysis. And then lastly is action. So within the framework, this is really the key around doing your insights portion of the framework. And if I go back up real quick for purposes of visualizing this, let's say I'm looking at this report and I come through and I highlight the big stuff. You can start to see how this becomes helpful, so you can understand what's going on and where the dollars are spending. if these I would consider a logistics fee, and I'm just picking on one example here. It could be spoils, it could be any of these other shortages, anything. But this is going to be a non-working trade, and we want to try to reduce those at our root so that we can spend money in places that are going to drive sales. Everyone in the supply chain wants that, and that's the goal. So when I talk about this $10,500 in the month of May, I'm going to come up here, and all of a sudden I can see on my list, I've drilled in, and bam, I got $10,500 from this deduction. And now I'm going to go find that backup. When I find that backup, I can understand the subcategory, the root underneath. I can diagnose it, and then I can now start to have the insight into what's driving these costs in my business that I want to try to peel out and spend against revenue driving events. So that covers us for the insights. I really, really hope that that helps you kind of wrap your head around how this part of the framework works and how it can help 10x your business. It can be something that you can implement right away. And I mentioned, as we go through this process, we start to see, man, this would be phenomenal for me to be able to do this. But as we all know, it kind of creates a new problem, which is to get to this place is going to take time. It's going to take energy. And as you grow, that time only becomes more labor, more time intensive, and really, really challenging. And so as you can imagine, you're going to get to a point where that's going to be just too much to do manually. And that's where I like to talk and just show you, yep, I've been there. And that's where TrewUp comes in. So again, as I mentioned, we've taken these backup documents from our distributor retailer partners. We've digitized them, categorized them. We do it all the way down to the UPC level by account. We give both category, reason. We give best practices by category so you can understand what's going on and you can start to do some of that root cause analysis, which we'll talk about next week. And as it relates to this, insights, you can see how our reporting then gives you the information you need to start to see those insights. You don't have to spend the 20, 30, 40 hours a month trying to create these reports. You can get it automatically with drill in by month, and you can see those specific deductions underneath. So you start high, drill down all the way to the root cause, which I'll talk about again next week. But that's how you can 10x the business. This is a framework that I hope you can walk away with and implement in your business right away. I really want to see each one of you guys reach the goals and objectives of your business. And again, I just thank you so much for being here with me today, for joining us in reviewing the insights portion of the Deduction Mastery Framework. We'll have session 3 coming up where we'll talk about the root cause analysis. And I can't wait to get into that one with you. It's going to be awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great one.